The transport ship descended through Earth's atmosphere, and Taman pressed his scaled face against the window. Below him stretched a world of blue oceans and green lands wrapped in swirling white clouds. It looked peaceful, almost boring. He couldn't understand why the Galactic Council had chosen this planet as a training location. "This is ridiculous," muttered Somin beside him. Her multifaceted eyes reflected the light as she adjusted her translator device. "My people have been exploring space for 10,000 years. What could these humans possibly teach us?" Jinho said nothing. The crystalline warrior simply stood at attention, his body catching and refracting the cabin lights. But even he seemed unimpressed by what he saw below. The exchange program had been announced 6 months ago. The Galactic Council wanted to promote unity among species, so they created a cultural training program. Elite warriors and scholars from every major civilization would train on different homeworlds, learn from each other, build bridges of understanding. Taman had volunteered immediately. He was one of the finest warriors of the Vaxorian Empire. He had conquered simulation courses that broke lesser soldiers. He had trained in gravity chambers and hostile environments. 3 months on a primitive world like Earth would be easy, maybe even restful. The ship landed at a facility in the middle of what the humans called countryside. Rolling hills stretched in every direction, covered in grass and trees. The air smelled strange when they exited the ship, sweet and heavy. Taman's nostrils flared as he tried to identify the scents. A human woman waited for them at the landing pad. She was small, barely reaching Taman's shoulder, with dark hair pulled back in a simple style. Her face showed smile lines around her eyes and mouth. "Welcome to Earth," she said, her voice bright and cheerful. "I'm Hewan, the facility director. We're so excited to have you here." Taman exchanged glances with Soman. The human seemed genuinely happy to see them, not intimidated at all by their obvious superiority. "Thank you for hosting us," Soman said, keeping her voice polite. "We look forward to learning about human culture." "Wonderful." Hewan clapped her hands together. "Let me show you to your quarters. Dinner will be served in 2 hours. I hope you're hungry." The facility was more modern than Taman expected. Clean hallways, comfortable rooms, advanced technology. Perhaps the humans weren't as primitive as he'd thought. His room had a bed that seemed too soft, a window overlooking the hills, and a bathroom with running water. Basic but acceptable. At dinner, they gathered in a large cafeteria. Other humans moved through the space, talking and laughing. They seemed relaxed, casual. Some wore exercise clothing. Others wore simple shirts and pants. None of them looked like warriors. A young human man approached their table carrying a tray of food. He had an easy smile and moved with a relaxed confidence that Taman found slightly annoying. "Hi there," the human said. "I'm Do-hyun. I work in the kitchen here. Brought you some food we thought you might like. We checked your dietary requirements." He set down plates in front of each of them. Taman looked at his meal with suspicion. Some kind of grain, cooked vegetables, and protein that had been carefully prepared to match Vaxorian nutrition needs. "Thanks," Jinho said quietly. "No problem," Do-hyun replied. "If you need anything, just let me know. The weather's supposed to be nice tomorrow. Good for your first day of training." He walked away, humming something under his breath. Taman watched him go. The human moved with an odd grace, like someone completely comfortable in their own body. It irritated him for reasons he couldn't name. "These humans are soft," Taman said quietly to his companions. "This will be easier than I thought." After dinner, Haiwan gathered all the trainees in a briefing room. There were 12 aliens total from 6 different species. All elite, all confident. "Tomorrow we begin your training program," Hewan said, still smiling that warm smile. "We're going to follow a standard human training regimen. Nothing too extreme. We want you to understand how humans prepare physically and mentally for challenges." She pulled up a holographic schedule. "We'll start with morning exercises at 6 a.m. Just a simple run to wake up your bodies. Then breakfast. After that, we'll do some team activities. Rock climbing, swimming, sports. Basic things that human children learn." Taman felt himself relax. This would be a vacation. Running and climbing? He'd been doing that since he was hatched. The other aliens seemed equally relieved. "Any questions?" Hewan asked. "How far is the morning run?" Salman asked. "Oh, just 5 kilometers, Hewan said. "We don't want to tire you out too much on the first day." 5 kilometers. Taman almost laughed. Back home he ran 20 kilometers before breakfast. This was going to be absurdly easy. That night, Taman lay in his too-soft bed and stared at the ceiling. Outside his window, he could hear strange sounds. Insects chirping, wind moving through trees, something howling in the distance. The sounds made him uneasy, though he couldn't say why. He thought about Do-hyun, the human from the cafeteria. The way he moved, the casual confidence. There was something about him that didn't fit. He seemed too comfortable, too relaxed, like someone who had never faced a real challenge. Taman rolled over and closed his eyes. Tomorrow he would show these humans what a real warrior looked like. 3 months of easy training, and then he would return home with another achievement to add to his record. The room was too quiet, too still. He was used to sleeping in military barracks with the hum of life support systems and the breathing of fellow soldiers. Here there was only silence and those strange nature sounds. Finally, exhaustion took him, and he drifted into an uneasy sleep. He didn't know that in his own room, Do-hyun was preparing his lunch for tomorrow. Just some simple kimbap and fruit. Maybe some spicy noodles if he felt like it. He packed it carefully, thinking about the long day ahead. He had a morning jog planned, 5 kilometers through the hills. Then work at the facility. Maybe he'd squeeze in some weight training in the evening. Just a normal day. Do-hyun hummed as he worked, completely unaware that tomorrow would begin a 3-month experience that would fundamentally change how the galaxy viewed humanity. He was just thinking about lunch. The alarm went off at 5:30 in the morning. Taman jerked awake, confused by the harsh beeping sound. For a moment he didn't remember where he was. Then it came back. Earth, the human training facility. He dragged himself out of bed and looked out the window. The sun hadn't risen yet. The sky was that strange purple-gray color that came before dawn. He felt heavy, wrong, like something was pressing down on his whole body. In the bathroom, he splashed water on his face and tried to shake off the feeling. It must be the unfamiliar bed, or the strange sounds from last night. He'd feel better once he started moving. The other trainees gathered outside the facility at 6 a.m. sharp. Everyone looked tired. Salman's antennae drooped. One of the other aliens, a floating gas being named Minho, seemed dimmer than usual. Hyun appeared, wearing bright athletic clothing and still smiling. "Good morning, everyone!" Beautiful day for a run, isn't it? Taman looked at the sky. It was barely light. The air felt thick and wet. He wouldn't call it beautiful. "We'll be doing a simple 5-kilometer loop," Hyun continued. "The path is marked. Take your time. This isn't a race. Just get your bodies moving and enjoy the scenery." She stretched briefly, touching her toes with ease. "Ready? Let's go." They started running. The path led away from the facility into the hills. For the first few minutes, Taman felt confident. 5 kilometers, nothing. He could do this in his sleep. Then his legs began to feel strange, heavy, like he was dragging weights behind him. His breathing came harder. The air tasted thick and sweet, almost intoxicating. It made his head feel fuzzy. Beside him, Somin was already struggling. Her multiple legs moved quickly, but she seemed to be working twice as hard for half the speed. "Is it just me?" she gasped. "Or is this planet trying to kill us?" Taman didn't answer. He was focusing on breathing, one foot in front of the other. "Keep moving. Don't show weakness." By the 2nd kilometer, sweat poured down his scales. Sweat? He never sweated this much during training. His muscles burned with effort. The path sloped upward slightly, and it felt like climbing a mountain. Jinho had fallen behind, his crystalline body making grinding sounds with each step. The other aliens were scattered along the path, all struggling. By the 3rd kilometer, Taman's pride was dying. This was supposed to be easy, a warm-up, but his body screamed for rest. His legs shook. His vision blurred at the edges. He forced himself forward. He was a Vexorian warrior. He would not fail at something as simple as running. That's when he heard it. Footsteps behind him. Fast, rhythmic, steady. Someone was coming up the path, moving quickly. Taman glanced back and saw a human. It was Do-hyun, the kitchen worker from yesterday. He wore simple running clothes and had small devices in his ears, probably playing music. On his back, he carried a large backpack that looked full and heavy. Do-hyun ran past Taman without slowing down. His breathing was even and controlled. He wasn't struggling at all. He looked like someone out for a casual morning jog, not someone enduring physical torture. "Morning," Do-hyun called as he passed, waving cheerfully. Taman stared after him in disbelief. The human disappeared up the path, still moving at that steady, easy pace. Salman had seen it too. "That's not possible," she whispered. He's carrying extra weight. How is he not dying? Taman had no answer. He just kept moving, one agonizing step at a time. The last 2 kilometers were pure suffering. Every muscle hurt. The gravity seemed to increase with each step. The thick air made him drowsy and energized at the same time, a confusing mix that made thinking difficult. When he finally reached the finish line, he collapsed onto the grass. Around him, other aliens were doing the same. Some were lying flat. Others sat with their heads between their knees. One was making sounds that might have been crying. Ewan stood at the finish line, not even breathing hard. Great job, everyone. That was a wonderful first run. How do you feel? Nobody answered. They were all too busy trying to survive. Take your time recovering, Ewan said kindly. Breakfast is in 30 minutes. Make sure to hydrate. Taman lay on the grass and stared at the sky. The sun was up now, bright and warm, too warm. Everything on this planet was too much. Too heavy, too bright, too wet, too alive. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, he forced himself to stand. His legs trembled. He walked slowly toward the facility, passing human staff members who were starting their own day. They all moved with that same casual ease, like the gravity didn't affect them. Like breathing wasn't difficult. In the cafeteria, Taman barely touched his breakfast. His body felt wrong, exhausted beyond anything he'd experienced before. Across the room, he saw Do-hyun sitting at a table with other humans. The kitchen worker was eating an enormous sandwich stacked high with various foods. He ate with obvious enjoyment, talking and laughing with his companions. I'm thinking of hiking Mount Bukhan this weekend, Do-hyun said to his friends. Should be nice weather. Just 5 kilometers. One of the other humans joked. That's barely a warm-up. They all laughed. Taman felt something cold settle in his chest. Barely a warm-up. The run that had nearly destroyed him was considered nothing by these humans. Someone sat down next to him, moving carefully like everything hurt. I've been thinking, she said quietly. I accessed the Galactic database last night. Earth is classified as a high-gravity world. The gravity here is significantly stronger than on most inhabited planets. How much stronger? Taman asked. About 30% more than my homeworld, Soman said. Maybe 20% more than yours. We've been training our entire lives in easier conditions. These humans evolved in this gravity. They don't even notice it. Taman looked back at Do-hyun. The human was now eating what looked like pickled vegetables, the kind that smelled sharp and acidic. He ate them like they were delicious. This is going to be a long 3 months, Jinho said from across the table. The crystalline warrior looked dull, his usual shine faded. I have made a terrible mistake volunteering for this program. Taman couldn't disagree. And this was only day 1. Hwan's cheerful voice came over the facility speakers. All trainees, please meet at the climbing wall in 15 minutes. Today we're going to work on upper body strength and problem-solving skills. It'll be fun. Around the cafeteria, aliens made sounds of despair. Taman closed his eyes. Fun, the human had said. This was her idea of fun. He watched Do-hyun finish his sandwich and stand up, stretching casually. The human looked completely refreshed, like he hadn't just run 5 kilometers with a heavy backpack. He was humming again, that same cheerful tune. Taman wondered if it was too late to quit the program. But no, he was a warrior. He would endure, even if it killed him. 1 week had passed. 1 week that felt like a lifetime. Taman lay in his bed, staring at the ceiling, and tried to remember what it felt like to not be in constant pain. Every muscle in his body hurt. His scales had lost their shine. When he looked in the mirror that morning, he'd barely recognized himself. His eyes were dull, his posture slumped. He looked defeated. Day 2 had been rock climbing. Taman had thought he understood climbing. On his homeworld, he'd scaled cliff faces and training walls. But Earth's climbing wall was different. The high gravity made every grip a battle. His arms had given out after just 10 meters, and he'd hung from the safety rope, gasping and humiliated. Meanwhile, human children had climbed on a wall next to theirs. Actual children no older than 10 Earth years. They'd scrambled up the wall like insects, laughing and challenging each other. One small girl had climbed past Taman, looked at him dangling from his rope, and asked if he was okay. The pity in her voice had stung worse than the muscle failure. Day 3 was swimming. Taman had nearly drowned. Not because he couldn't swim, but because the water in Earth's pool felt like liquid metal. Heavy and resistant, he'd thrashed and struggled while human lifeguards watched carefully, ready to save him if needed. Other humans, including elderly ones, had swum laps around the struggling aliens with smooth, powerful strokes. Do-hyun had been at the pool that day swimming during his break. The kitchen worker had done something called butterfly stroke that looked impossibly difficult. His body had moved through the water like a machine, powerful and efficient. Then he'd climbed out completely unbothered and eaten his lunch by the poolside. Some kind of rice and vegetables wrapped in seaweed. Day 4 had been team sports. Basketball, they called it. Taemin had learned that humans had terrifying hand-eye coordination. They could track a moving ball while running, calculate trajectories in their heads, and make their bodies do exactly what they wanted. All in Earth's crushing gravity. The game had lasted an hour, and Taemin had felt like his heart would explode. Day 5 was when things had gotten truly bad. Hiking with weighted packs through the mountains. Just a simple day hike, Hwan had said. 10 kilometers total, with elevation changes. Bring water and snacks. 3 aliens had needed medical attention. 1 had collapsed from the gravity and exhaustion. Another had suffered something like heat stroke. Jinho's crystalline structure had developed cracks from the stress and temperature changes. Taemin had finished the hike through pure stubbornness. But when he'd reached the top of the mountain and looked at the view, he hadn't felt triumph. He'd felt terror. Because scattered around the summit were other humans, families having picnics, elderly couples taking photos. A woman who looked about 60 Earth years old had jogged past them on the trail, running uphill, barely breathing hard. Now it was day 7, and Taemin was starting to understand something horrible. This wasn't training, this was just normal life on Earth. These weren't exercises designed to push humans to their limits. This was what humans considered basic everyday activity. He dragged himself out of bed and got ready for the day. His hands shook as he tried to fasten his uniform. Everything was harder now. His body was breaking down under the constant stress of simply existing on this planet. In the cafeteria at breakfast, the aliens sat together in silence. They looked like survivors of a battle, which in a way they were. Somin had her data pad out, studying something intently. Her antennae twitched with agitation. "What are you reading?" Taemin asked. "Research," Somin said quietly. "I couldn't sleep last night, so I dug deeper into the Galactic database." Taemin, Earth is classified as a death world. A what? A death world. It's a scientific designation. Planets where the environmental conditions are so hostile that they should be uninhabitable, but life evolved there anyway, becoming incredibly resilient and adaptable. She turned the pad so he could see. "Look at this. Earth has extreme weather patterns. Temperature swings that would kill most species. Hurricanes, tornadoes, earthquakes, volcanic eruptions. The atmosphere is rich with oxygen, which is toxic to some species and intoxicating to others. The gravity is high. The day-night cycle is irregular. The planet is covered in predators, venoms, diseases, and poisonous plants." Taemin felt his blood go cold. And humans evolved here? Not just evolved, thrived. Humans are apex persistence hunters. They don't have claws or armor or venom. They survive through sheer endurance. They can run for hours, tracking prey until it collapses from exhaustion. They can eat an enormous variety of foods, including things that are literally poisonous. Because their bodies learn to process toxins, they can survive injuries that would kill most species because they developed incredible healing abilities. She looked up at him, her multifaceted eyes reflecting fear. "Taemin, we're not training with warriors. We're training with survivors of one of the harshest environments in the known galaxy, and they think this is normal." Across the cafeteria, Do-hyun sat at his usual spot, eating lunch even though it was only breakfast time. He worked the late shift today, so his schedule was different. He was eating something that steamed and smelled intensely of spices. The kind of spices that made Taemin's eyes water from across the room. The kitchen worker ate calmly, occasionally drinking something hot from a cup. He looked completely content, like someone without a care in the world. A human woman sat down across from Do-hyun. "How's the training program going?" she asked. Do-hyun swallowed a bite of his spicy food. "Seems good. The aliens are working really hard. They look tired, though. I think they're not used to the schedule." "Well, it is pretty intense. 5-kilometer runs every morning, all those activities." "I guess," Do-hyun said. "Seems pretty standard to me, though. My nephew does more than this for his school sports program, and he's only 12. They both chuckled. Do-hyun took another bite of his food, completely unaware that his casual words had just confirmed Somin's research. What was breaking elite alien warriors was considered normal for human children. Taemin felt something shift in his mind. A fundamental change in perspective. He'd come to Earth expecting to coast through easy training and add another achievement to his record. He'd looked down on humans as primitive and weak. Now he understood. Humans weren't weak. They were forged in hell. Every single day of their lives was survival training that would break most species, and they didn't even realize it, because they had nothing to compare it to. This was just life for them. Jinho sat down at the table, moving carefully. His cracks had been repaired, but he still looked fragile. I spoke with Hyuan this morning, he said quietly. I asked her if the training would get easier. What did she say? Soman asked. She said we're still in the introductory phase. Next week we start the actual program. The table fell silent. This was the introductory phase. This torture was them going easy on the aliens. Taemin looked back at Do-hyun. The human was finishing his spicy meal, humming that familiar tune. His movements were relaxed and efficient. He was built like someone who'd never experienced true hardship, but Taemin now understood that was wrong. Do-hyun's entire existence was hardship. He'd just adapted so completely that he didn't notice anymore. I will never underestimate humans again, Jinho said softly. Taemin nodded. None of them would. This week had broken their pride in their bodies. But it had taught them something valuable. It had taught them what real strength looked like. Not flashy power or advanced technology, just the simple, terrifying ability to endure anything and keep going, and to do it all while humming and enjoying lunch. Week 6 arrived and Taemin barely recognized himself anymore. When he looked in the mirror, he saw someone different. Leaner, harder, with eyes that had seen things. His scales had regained their shine, but it was a different kind of shine. Battle-worn, weathered. The aliens had adapted. Not completely. Never completely. Earth would always be harder for them than for humans. But they'd learned to survive. More than that, they'd learned to understand. The exercises continued. They ran every morning now without collapsing. They could climb the wall to the top. They could swim laps without drowning. They could play basketball without feeling like their hearts would explode. They still struggled, still suffered, but they endured. And with endurance came respect. Taemin watched human children playing in the facility courtyard during his afternoon break. Really watched them this time. Without the blinding lens of pride, the children ran and jumped and climbed with casual ease. One little boy fell hard on the pavement, scraped both knees bloody, cried for exactly 30 seconds, then got up and kept playing. That moment crystallized something for Taemin. Human children were trained through experience. They were allowed to fall, to hurt, to fail, and then taught to get back up. Pain was a teacher, not an enemy. Every human learned this from birth. Fascinating, isn't it? Salman said, settling beside him on the bench. She'd been watching the same thing. They're teaching their young to endure suffering, Taemin said. No, Sumin corrected gently. They're teaching them that suffering is temporary, that pain ends, that you can survive anything if you just keep moving forward. It's a completely different philosophy from ours. She pulled out her datapad, which had become her constant companion. I've been researching human culture. Do you know what they call people who give up when things get hard? Quitters. It's one of their worst insults. Their entire society is built around this idea that persistence matters more than talent, that effort matters more than ability. Taemin thought about Do-hyun. Tell me about him, he said. The kitchen worker. Can you find information about him? Soman tapped at her pad. Do-hyun Park, age 32. Works at the facility and food service. Before this, he was a rescue worker in mountain areas. Before that, he was in the human military for 6 years. He has certifications in emergency medicine, rock climbing, and survival training. He climbed Mount Everest 3 years ago. What's Mount Everest? The tallest mountain on Earth. The summit has extremely low oxygen and temperatures that drop to deadly levels. Humans climb it for recreation, for the challenge. Hundreds die trying, but thousands have succeeded. Taemin felt his worldview shift again. Do-hyun wasn't a soft civilian. He was a veteran of human military service and extreme sports, and he considered his current job relaxing, low stress. Why does he work in a kitchen if he's qualified for so much more? Taemin asked. Soman shrugged. The database says he wanted a calmer life after his rescue work. Apparently that job was too intense even for him. Too intense. For a human. Taemin couldn't imagine what that meant. That afternoon they had a new exercise. Stress management training. Hyuan explained it cheerfully as always. Modern life can be overwhelming, she said. So we're going to practice meditation and breathing techniques. These are tools humans use to stay calm in difficult situations. They gathered in a quiet room with soft mats on the floor. A human instructor, a gentlewoman named Yunji, guided them through breathing exercises and meditation. Focus on your breath, she said softly. Let the thoughts come and go. Don't fight them. Just observe, Taman tried. But his mind wouldn't quiet. Outside he could hear Earth's constant noise. Birds, insects, wind, distant traffic. His homeworld was quieter, more controlled. Here life was everywhere, pressing in from all sides. It's okay if it's difficult, Yunji said, as if reading his thoughts. The noise of our world can be distracting. But that's why we practice. We learn to find peace even in chaos, find peace in chaos. Another impossible human skill. They lived in a world that was constantly trying to kill them, and they'd learned to be calm about it. After meditation, they had dietary adaptation training. This was new and terrifying. They were introduced to various earth foods and taught how to safely try new things. Humans are omnivores, explained the nutritionist, a man named Kiwan. We eat almost anything. Plants, animals, fungi, fermented foods. Our digestive systems are incredibly adaptable, but we know yours aren't, so we'll go slowly. He showed them plates of different foods. Some looked safe. Others looked actively dangerous. This is kimchi, Kiwan said, holding up a jar of red, pungent vegetables. Fermented cabbage with spices. Very popular in Korean culture. It's spicy and sour and full of beneficial bacteria. Taman stared at it. The smell alone made his eyes water. You eat rotten vegetables? Fermented, not rotten, Kiwan corrected with a smile. The bacteria are good for digestion. Humans have been eating fermented foods for thousands of years. We'll save this one for later in your training, though. They tried milder foods first, rice, plain vegetables, mild fruits. Even these were challenging. Earth foods were so complex, so full of different flavors and textures. Taman's stomach protested, but he forced himself to try everything. If humans could endure his world, he could endure their food. At lunch, Do-Hyun sat at his usual spot. Today he was eating something that looked like noodles in bright red sauce. The smell was incredible and terrifying. Steam rose from the bowl and Do-Hyun's face was flushed from the heat of it. But he ate with obvious pleasure, slurping the noodles and wiping sweat from his forehead. A human coworker sat down across from him. Isn't that the nuclear fire noodle? She asked. Do-Hyun grinned. Yeah, I was craving something spicy. That stuff is like liquid pain. How do you eat it? Practice, Do-Hyun said, taking another big bite. You build up tolerance. My grandmother used to make food way spicier than this. They laughed together. Taman watched in amazement. The human was eating something called liquid pain. For fun, because he was craving it. Later that day, during their evening free time, Taman found himself in the facility gym. Some aliens were there trying to exercise on human equipment. Everything was too heavy, designed for Earth's gravity and human strength. Do-Hyun was there too, lifting weights that looked absurdly heavy. He did it calmly, methodically, like it was a casual activity. Between sets, he stretched and drank water. Taman approached him. For the first time since arriving on Earth, he wanted to actually talk to this human, to understand. Hello, Taman said. Do-Hyun looked up and smiled. Oh, hey. You're one of the trainees, right? How's the program going? It's difficult, Taman admitted. More difficult than I expected. Yeah, I bet. Must be weird being on a new planet. Do-Hyun picked up a towel and wiped his face. But you guys are doing great. I've seen you all working really hard. Can I ask you something? Taman said. Sure, why do you do this? The exercise, the difficult foods, the challenging activities. You could have an easier life. Do-Hyun thought about it, his face serious for once. I guess because easy isn't the same as good. My grandmother lived to be 104. She worked in rice fields her whole life. Hard physical labor every day. And you know what she told me before she died? She said the hard work kept her strong, kept her mind sharp, gave her purpose. He set down his weights and looked at Taman directly. Humans believe that struggle makes you better. Not suffering for suffering's sake, but choosing to challenge yourself, to push your limits, because that's how you grow. That's how you find out what you're capable of. Taman felt something click into place. You're not trying to show off. You genuinely believe this. Of course, Do-Hyun said, looking confused. Why would I show off? This is just normal stuff. Just normal stuff. And there it was. The fundamental truth. To humans, this impossible endurance was just normal life. The final week arrived faster than Taman expected. 12 weeks had passed. 12 weeks that had fundamentally changed everything he thought he knew about strength, about survival, about what it meant to be a warrior. The aliens gathered in the briefing room for the final challenge. Taman looked at his fellow trainees and saw the same transformation in all of them. They were harder now. Leaner. Their eyes held a different kind of knowledge. They'd been broken down and rebuilt, not into humans, but into something that understood humans. Hewan stood at the front of the room, smiling as always. But Taman had learned to see past that smile. The human director was kind, yes, but there was steel underneath. She'd designed this program carefully, knowing exactly how hard to push them. Congratulations on making it to the final week, Hewan said. You've all worked incredibly hard and we're proud of your progress. For your graduation challenge, we have something special planned. She pulled up an image on the screen. A forest. Dense green, alive with the chaos of Earth's nature. This is a nearby nature reserve. For your final test, you'll spend 24 hours surviving there. Alone. No technology except basic supplies. A water bottle, a simple shelter, basic first aid kit. That's all. The room fell silent. Taman felt his heart's beating faster. Survive in Earth's wilderness. Alone. We call this camping, Hewan continued. Human children do it all the time. Scout groups, school trips, family outings. It's considered a fun recreational activity. Of course it was. Of course humans sent their children into the wilderness for fun. You'll each be dropped at different locations, Hewan explained. Not too far from each other, but far enough that you'll need to rely on yourselves. We'll be monitoring you remotely for safety, but we won't intervene unless there's a real emergency. The goal is to experience Earth's natural environment and learn to coexist with it for one full day and night. Soman raised a tentacle. What kind of danger should we expect? Hewan pulled up another screen showing various Earth animals. The forest contains wildlife. Deer, rabbits, squirrels. Mostly harmless. There are also some predators. Bears occasionally wander through the area, though they usually avoid humans. Some venomous snakes, but they're not aggressive if you leave them alone. Various insects, including ones that bite. The weather forecast shows possible rain tonight, so be prepared to stay dry. Bears, venomous snakes, and humans sent their children here. Any questions? Hewan asked. Jinho spoke up, his voice quiet but steady. Are we expected to succeed? To actually survive the full 24 hours? Hewan's smile softened. We expect you to try your best. If you need help, we'll come get you. There's no shame in that. This exercise isn't about proving you're as capable as humans in Earth's environment. You're not. You didn't evolve here. This is about facing fear, adapting to challenges, and understanding that survival is possible even in uncomfortable circumstances. Taman felt something relax in his chest. She wasn't setting them up to fail. She was teaching them that it was okay to struggle, that trying mattered more than succeeding. The next morning, they were taken to the forest in separate vehicles. Taman's drop point was a small clearing surrounded by massive trees. The moment the vehicle left, silence fell. Not true silence. Earth was never truly silent. He heard birds calling, insects buzzing, leaves rustling, water flowing somewhere nearby. He set up his basic shelter, a simple tent that took him 20 minutes to figure out. Human children did this for fun. He kept repeating it like a mantra. If human children could do this, he could do this. The day passed slowly. Taman explored his immediate area carefully, watching for dangers. He saw a deer and froze in terror before realizing it was more afraid of him. He heard something large moving through the bushes and his heart nearly stopped, but it turned out to be a rabbit. He ate the simple rations provided, drank water from his bottle, tried to stay calm. The forest was beautiful in a terrifying way. So much life, so much growth, so much potential danger. Everything competing for survival, everything adapting and changing. This was the world that made humans. This chaos, This constant pressure. No wonder they were the way they were. Night fell, and Taman learned what real darkness meant. His homeworld had 3 moons and extensive light pollution. Here, away from cities, the darkness was complete. Above him, through breaks in the trees, he saw more stars than he'd ever imagined. Earth's galaxy, viewed from this beautiful, terrible planet. He heard sounds in the darkness. Things moving, things hunting, things being hunted, the food chain in action. He stayed in his tent, heart racing, and tried to remember his meditation training. Find peace in chaos. Let the fear come and go. Observe, don't fight. Slowly, gradually, he found a kind of acceptance. Yes, this was frightening. Yes, he was uncomfortable. But he was also alive, experiencing something profound. Understanding finally what it meant to be human, to live every single day in a world like this and not just survive but thrive, to find beauty in it, to call it home. Morning came eventually, as mornings always did. Taman emerged from his tent exhausted, but alive. He'd survived. Barely, but he'd done it. The vehicles came to collect them all. Back at the facility, the aliens gathered in the meeting room. They looked rough, dirty and tired and shaken, but also proud. They'd faced Earth's wilderness and survived. The graduation ceremony was simple but meaningful. Hayuan called each of them forward and presented certificates. You came to Earth, expecting one thing and found another, she said during her speech. You faced challenges that pushed you far beyond your comfort zones, but you didn't give up. You adapted, you endured, and that's the most human thing you could have done. She paused, looking at each of them. I want you to understand something important. This program wasn't designed to show you that humans are better than your species. It was designed to show you that strength comes in many forms. Your species have incredible abilities we can't match. You can see colors we can't perceive. Calculate mathematics that would break our computers, survive in environments that would kill us instantly. But you needed to understand what makes humans unique. We survived by never giving up. Ever. No matter how bad things got, no matter how impossible the odds, humans kept trying. That's our strength. Endurance, persistence, the absolute refusal to quit. Taman felt tears forming, something his species did rarely. She was right. That was the lesson. Not that humans were superior, but that different strengths had value. That his own abilities were real, even if they looked different from human abilities. After the ceremony, there was a final meal, a celebration. For the first time, humans and aliens ate together as equals. Taman found he could tolerate some human foods now. Not enjoy them like humans did, but manage them. His body had adapted, just a little. Dohyun sat down at their table carrying his usual lunch. Today it was something wrapped in rice and seaweed with a side of soup. Congratulations, he said warmly. You all did amazing. Thank you, Taman said, for everything. Even when we couldn't see it, you were teaching us. Dohyun looked confused. I just work in the kitchen. No, So-min said gently. You showed us what normal humans look like. That was more educational than any exercise. Understanding dawned on Do-hyun's face, followed by embarrassment. Oh, well, I'm glad I could help, I guess. They all laughed. Even now, the human didn't fully understand how extraordinary he was. That was perhaps the most human thing about him. Later, as the aliens boarded their ships to return home, Taman looked back at Earth, the blue and green planet that had broken him and remade him. He would never forget this experience. None of them would. Minho floated beside him. What will you tell people when you get home? Taman thought about it. The truth. That humans are not weak. That they live every day in conditions that would kill most species. That they do it without complaining because they don't know any other way. And that if we ever face humans as enemies, we should be very, very afraid. Because they're strong? Minho asked. No, Taman said. Because they're survivors. And survivors never give up. Never, no matter what. Back on Earth, Do-yoon sat in the now quiet cafeteria, eating his lunch alone. A co-worker joined him. "How were the aliens?" she asked. "Did they learn anything?" Do-yoon shrugged, taking a bite of his kimbap. "I think so. They seemed really tired, though. I hope they got some good rest. The training must have been tough on them." "Did you tell them about the advanced program?" "No," Do-hyun said, grinning a little. "Didn't want to scare them. The basic program was hard enough." They chuckled together, completely unaware that they were discussing what the aliens would forever consider the hardest challenge of their lives. To humans, it was just basic training. Just normal life. Just another day on the death world they called home. Do-yoon finished his lunch and cleaned up his dishes, humming that same cheerful tune. He had an afternoon jog planned, just 5 kilometers through the hills. Nothing special, just enough to stay in shape. Just another ordinary day for a human. Just another impossible feat for everyone else.